everyone, welcome to Football DNA. It gives me great pleasure today to welcome a man. Well, he's welcomed me into his home, to be honest. I'm privileged to be here. A man, is an icon of the game, and someone I've grown up listening to and watching football, and his voice just is Mr. Football to me. And it's like I say, it's a great honour to be here, Mr. John Motson. John,
nice to meet you, Jim.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Great to have you. I mean, I was going through your, obviously the Wikipedia and all that. That's a career that's spanned over 50 years with the BBC.
Well, it has now. Yeah. 68. I joined Radio 2 as it was then, as a sort of general dog's body, I suppose you'd say. I was reading the racing results and tearing the paper off the machines and writing scripts. And then that led to them trying me out as a commentator, and I did a few radio commentaries back in the early 70s, and then Match of the Day came calling when Ken Wolstenholme, the legendary commentator, he left the BBC in the early 70s, and I kind of came in underneath David Coleman and Barry Davis, so that was my grounding, really.
Amazing. Well, I was going to ask you that, man, because so Match of the Day, was it already started then?
Yeah, Match of the Day started in 1964. It was just one match then. I mean, I remember seeing the first game, and it grew a little bit before I joined.
So it wasn't on a famous Saturday night, it was that Saturday afternoon?
Believe it or not, it started on BBC 2 at about 6:30, and they showed the highlights of one match.
Right.
And then as the programme developed and grew in popularity, they moved it to BBC 1, and then they started a two-match format. So by the time I started, it was Barry Davis doing one game and me doing the other most Saturdays.
Right.
Although when it was big games at that time, David Coleman kept the seat warm for England matches and cup finals. And it stayed like that actually for a very long time. We didn't have any live football then apart from the cup final.
Right.
So
it was always a massive day as well.
It was a huge day.
I used to love watching it as a kid.
My sort of weekly diet was highlights of a game either in the old Division 1, or we even did second and third division games then. Right. Contract demanded that. I batted on from there, so to speak.
Fantastic. So if I can take you back a little bit even before that.
Yeah.
I mean, so growing up, did you play football? Did you enjoy playing football?
I went to a rugby school. Never forgiven my father for that. But no, I did. And then when I left school, I joined the local weekly paper in Barnet, in Hertfordshire, and I did 4 years training as a general all-round reporter, doing a little bit of football, the local clubs, Barnet and Finchley, on a Saturday.
So you was always thinking...
Yeah, thinking a little bit that way. But the real breakthrough for me, Jimmy, came when I moved out of Barnet, out of local papers, into provincial papers, and I joined a daily paper in Sheffield, the Morning Telegraph. And by now I was reporting league matches, Sheffield Wednesday, Sheffield United.
So this is reporting
written reports. But I was lucky because in that time the BBC launched its first raft of local radio stations, and Sheffield was one of them. And my sports editor was sort of co-opted to put together a radio football reporting programme on a Saturday. And what he used to do, whatever match I was being sent to for the paper, the reporters used to drop into the radio station on the way back and just do a brief account of the game. I mean, there was no training or anything. It was just
in the top.
Yeah, and I did that for a little while, and then there was a job advertised in Radio 2, which is when I joined the BBC properly, 1968.
68.
Yeah, so football was very different then, as you can imagine. But I did 3 years in Radio 2, and then 1971 was my start on Match of the Day.
Wow, that's an incredible start. Wow. Does it? I mean, time's gone so quick, hasn't it? Like 50 years, that must have flown by with the things you've seen.
I mean, all the games I've done. Yeah, I mean, I think you sort of worked out that maybe I did around 2,000 games.
Yeah, well, we were just looking before.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said on it before, just hearing your voice now in lectures is surreal, because I'm just used to hearing it on the telly, on the TV. That's, I mean, to be involved for 50 years in
that included 10 World Cups and
this sort of
the same number of European.
So we've got 10 World Cups, 10 European Championships, 29 FA Cup finals.
Yes.
More than 200 England games.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, I did, and had a fantastic time, really. I mean, obviously, as I went on, I did more important matches, and then eventually, when live football came on stream, so to speak, because I'd done highlights on Match of the Day for years and had done for years afterwards. But when live football came along and Sky, of course, launched, we started to do FA Cup and England games live. And some of the matches I did, particularly in the World Cup, if it was England, the audiences were quite I'm not that I thought about it while I was doing it, because I probably would have frozen, but you know.
Well, it's I suppose like obviously when I was playing some of the bigger games I played, I take had a playoff final for West Ham.
Yes, I can remember.
And I think someone had told me before there's so many millions watching on TV. I think I didn't really need to know that.
No, you didn't. It was
just a game to me at the time, so you realise the magnitude. I suppose it's the same for you if you...
Very much so. I mean, I think when I did the quarter-final, well, I did several, but England-Portugal in 2004 comes back to me. I think we had an audience of 23 million. And I think about the same when England played Germany in the World Cup semi-final in Italia 90.
Yeah, I remember them well.
They were the big games.
Fantastic games.
Yeah.
So just to be involved in them.
Sure,
the sheer numbers of that's incredible. I mean, did you ever think you'd sort of get... That's like, I suppose like you think football, you're building up and you want to go, or you're a coach and you're building up to where you want to get to.
Yeah, that's right.
Did you ever think that, right, I'm going to take this?
Yeah, I mean, I had the ambition to become the number one commentator. Obviously, that was what I was aiming at all the time. And I did a lot of... In those days, I did probably more preparation and homework than I do now, because it's funny nowadays that papers are full of statistics and diagrams and all that type of stuff. It wasn't like that then. You know, there wasn't an Opta and people didn't go into the detail that they do now. So all my early stuff, I had to research myself.
You researched that yourself?
Well, I did, and I remember one or two people were saying to me, "Oh, you're using too many facts and figures, too many statistics." Well,
ahead of your time.
If you think now, you know, obviously the place is flooded with them. So, that was my sort of style. I haven't changed my style or my preparation, if you like, too much in all those years. I mean, it's still a matter of identifying the players and rehearsing the numbers and the pronunciations and all the things that comment. Well, of course, the influx of overseas players changed all that, made that more difficult probably. But that was just part of the many changes I've seen.
Is that what you put down to your longevity in your preparation? Because it's like I said, I keep going back to the football side. If proper preparation.
Well, I mean, I really immersed myself in it. I made a point of going and meeting all the managers, and at that, of course, I was still in my 20s, so I got to know the players very well. In those days, it was a different situation to now, when the players come in, you know, with their headphones on.
Exactly.
You don't really get the opportunity, but I did then, and of course, I also had the privilege of interviewing some very famous managers at that time. You know, your Bill Shankleys, your Brian Cloughs. Your Don Reddy's.
That's definitely going to be a question down the line.
Interviewed Alf Ramsey a couple of times when he was England manager. Yeah, so I went back quite a way on that. But I did put a lot of time in. I mean, I used to, because there was no live football on television then, I used to go out to a lot of matches in midweek when I wasn't working, but just to watch the game and learn a little bit more. And another goalkeeper, funnily enough, Bob Wilson, helped me a great deal, because he had one of the early video machines, you know, the big Philips one, you know, and I used to go around to his house, Bob, and I used to sit with him, and we would go through my commentary from the previous week, and he would point things out.
Is this when he was playing?
He was on the cusp, really. He was just about to retire, and then he joined the BBC to do Football Focus.
Yes, of course he did.
And so Bob was coming into broadcasting himself, so we used to have many afternoons, you know, debating whether I'd read this particular bit of play right, or was that really a great save, or should I have said he could have, you know. Bob was great, and I was just learning really at that time.
Well, I think the analyst side of it, like I say, in football as well, it's coming to it more and more. It's great to be able to watch back, and I'm going to do this about this interview and get better as well.
Well, I know,
because I'm with the professionals now. This is really tough.
It's a pleasure anyway. But no, I mean, I've witnessed so many different stages of the way football has developed in this country. I mean, we mentioned the overseas players there. That's just one of the things that wasn't there when I started.
Because I mean, we're going to say, like you say, over 50 years, that's got to evolve and change so much. I mean, just going on, I don't have any questions to ask you. I'm going to just go on a tangent. But I mean, just going off track, the game They must have got quicker in that time because obviously, like things were slow. The pitches are different.
They were all those things were, and also, of course, all the teams wore 1 to 11, and 1 substitute, number 12. There was no sort of bench of 5 or 7 players then to interchange. So, in a way, it was rather more simple then. Yeah. Players stuck to their positions a lot more then. The other big difference, Jimmy, was the commercial side of the game hadn't taken hold then. Right. There were no sponsors, there was no corporate entertainment, there were no lounges like there are now. It was all a little bit more primitive, you know, and of course they weren't all seater stadiums then.
Yeah, and it's just packed to the rafters.
Oh, terracing! It was
so different.
It was a bit kind of brutal in some ways. Not.
Was there anywhere really tough to commentate?
Well, some of the positions weren't as good. I mean, Newcastle, your position was down in the paddock with the supporters, and Stoke was another one.
Did you get a lot of stick in that time?
Well, it wasn't so much that, it was the fact that when you knew you were going to Newcastle or Stoke, you were really nervous because you knew you had no sort of height to sort of read the play. It was quite a tough grounding actually, because we didn't have a replay machine in my very early years. It was used for racing on a Saturday because that was live, and the BBC only had one video replay machine. So when a goal was scored, Barry Davis or me had to kind of remember what had happened and talk over it as though the pictures were there. And then they used to put the replay in later in the evening.
Oh, that's really...
so that was a bit of a challenge.
You had to be right on the button.
You had to be on the button, and then you'd be sweating all evening till you watched the programme, hoping that what you'd said fitted the pictures. You know?
I mean, so just going. I mean, you mentioned Alf Ramsey.
Yes.
For some of our subscribers, and that they will all know Alf Ramsey and that, but. Yeah, the younger ones, hit the story.
Obviously, England had won the World Cup in '66. Alf was still manager when I started. I remember the first press conference I went to was held in his hotel bedroom.
Was it really?
There was about 6 people there.
Wow.
Whereas now the England manager walks into it's more than a lounge, isn't it? And where they do the thing after the game, it's like a theatre.
Yeah, it is.
And there's 300 people there, and there's cameras. But they weren't then.
No.
I mean, I did do an interview with Ramsey the night England got knocked out the World Cup by Poland in '73. Remember their goalkeeper was a star.
Brian Clough.
It's called him a clown.
He had an absolute worldie.
And I had
one of the heroes. Let one through.
I've worked with Peter in the latter years doing theatres and speeches, and he always gets asked about that. And he handles it very well.
And it's tough because I used to watch shows all the time. I had season ticket when he was at Forest, and he made save after save for England. He had save after save.
Best goalkeeper in the world at one point.
It's goalkeeper's lifeline. People didn't remember the one he let in there.
Well, I know.
The one that got deflected off Paul Parker in the World Cup.
Yeah, well.
It would have been an unbelievable save to save.
Yes, I know.
So much stick for it.
I know he did, and from 1 or 2 other players, by the way, I won't name. But anyway,
well, that's.
But Schultz was a great goalkeeper, and I went to England training in those days. You know, when I was doing an England match, I'd go down to the training, and it wasn't as the security wasn't there then. I mean, I could go and stand behind the goal and watch him at the practice the night before, that type of stuff.
Could anyone do that, or was that for you from the...
Well, I mean, what I'm saying is that you weren't thrown out, but I made a point one night. I remember one night, it was a freezing cold night in Romania, and I went to the England training, and I did stand behind the goal, and it was an education, really, hearing him barking at the players in front of him, which of course you couldn't quite appreciate in a game.
No, absolutely.
But in a training session, it took me... There's a lot more to this than meets the eye,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so going back on that, so Alf Ramsey, he must have had he won the World Cup. He must have had a nice, a good aura about him.
He did. That's exactly the right word. He had an aura, and he was also very defensive in his answers, and you had to be on your mettle a bit, because he wasn't an easy person to interview. Whereas, as time went on and Cloughie came on the scene, you couldn't stop him.
He did like to hear his own voice,
and he liked to have a go back, and we had some good banter, and it was.
Because I remember, was there a row once reviewing him
when Forest knocked Liverpool out the European Cup?
Yeah.
And he was on top form that night because it was a great result.
Great result.
And I remember, and that the thing you're referring to, he said to me, and maybe John, you will realise eventually that we're quite a good side. And of course, and one or two people who've watched that interview back said to me, God, how did you stand your ground there when he was crushing you and you were, what, 20-something? And I said, well, it was all part of the learning process, you know, and you did know with Cloughie, whenever you got sent to interview him, it didn't matter what, I mean, you knew you were going to get a good response, and it would be lively.
Yeah, so he had to matters. I mean, just quickly on that, how do you stand on that, the debate? He probably should have been in England.
Well, I'm sure he should have been, but the thing was, at the time, every time England appointed a manager, whether it was Greenwood or whether it was Revie, or they always played a little bit safe, the FA. You know, I think they thought if they gave it to Cloughie, could they control him? And I mean, the big debate about that.
That's probably not.
So he didn't get it, did he? But I mean, he went on and did great things with Forest after the Derby days, and you know, I think he really kind of half invented the idea of managers coming on television, because they didn't used to come on very often. At the end of a match of the day, I used to interview the winning manager for about 2 minutes, and that was it. But when Cloughie arrived and people thought there's mileage here, and the World Cup panel started and things like that, he almost, you know, sort of kicked it in, the idea that, well, yeah, these guys have got something really good to say, and it can get quite argumentative, and a lot of that was down to him, I think, Brian Clough.
Yeah. It does make great viewing. Well, you're watching it at home.
Well, yeah,
hang on, you're waiting for him to say something.
You know, what he did, he took managers into the celebrity circuit, in a way. They became personalities.
Around Parkinson and
that's right.
Muhammad Ali was
absolutely, and that was how it was, and then of course, as time went on, the players became more accessible, or rather were now learning how to deal with an interview themselves. So yeah, I mean, television football changed a lot in that period, the production of it, and how it was set up after a game, or even previews before a game were unheard of when I started. But now, of course, there's previews of half an hour before every match. So
and it makes it enjoyable viewing as well. I mean, I know now it's in the contracts the clubs have to have a certain amount of time, and media is such a massive part of a manager's life as well.
Amazing. I mean, you know, it is, and you're right, because you've only got to go down to the interview area after a match now in the Premier League, and my goodness me, it's like a bear pit down there. And these guys, Guardiola and so on, I mean, they actually do 7 or 8 different interviews for radio, television, the club channel, and there's only so much they can say. They finish up repeating themselves. But in my day, you know, it was just one quick interview, and that was it.
Anyone that's in the room can have it.
More or less, yeah. And there weren't that many in the room. This is the big difference, of course. I mean, there weren't so many outlets then. I mean, clubs didn't have their own channel, and the regional television and radio hadn't grown the way it has now. And as you say, now, I mean, when chairmen appoint managers, they have to consider how they come over in the media, as well as how good they are on the training ground.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a massive part, and it should be in the. I mean, I know they do the coaching badges, and you might be good on the pitch, but if you're actually not good with the media nowadays.
No. Well, I remember when I met you at Luton, which, funnily enough, I didn't get to explain to you quite. Luton's only up the road from me, and I do go there a bit. In fact, I'm going there this week. But the day I went to Luton Lincoln was quite deliberate, because all through last season I didn't get a game with, and I didn't know the Kelly brothers. And you actually got them out the dressing room.
Yeah, that's right.
I met them, and I was quite flattered, because some managers say, "Oh, hello," and disappear and do it. But they both said, "Oh, we grew up with your voice," and we had quite a chat, didn't we? That day.
I mean, they're really good. Dan and Nick.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm sure.
And they was delighted to meet you. That was pretty genuine.
Well, that was good.
Because I remember seeing you in the corridor.
Yeah, I was just hanging around waiting for them to come out.
Yeah. But no, I mean, that's great, and I think anyone who knows the football would more than happy to speak to you about.
Well, I just thought they were 2 people I ought to just say hello to, you know, get to know them, and it was good. Yeah,
so I'm surprised actually, because we was on the telly that much last year.
Yeah, you were, and I never quite got to. I didn't get allocated a Lincoln game, and I was thinking, I've got to meet these guys somehow, because they're going to be. I think they're going to go places, you know.
Yeah,
I still do, by the way.
Yeah,
and it was just me, because in those early days, I was going back to my roots, really, because in those early days I went out there wasn't any live football on television, so I had to go out in the week and meet people and go to games, and I always made a point of getting to know the managers, and not just the top ones, but further down the line, and of course a lot of the players who I met then have become managers since.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it was a worthwhile exercise.
It's a great exercise, really good point. I mean, just speaking of, was there any other managers that stand out over that time? I was talking about Cloughy.
Well, I think Laurie McMenemy helped me a lot at Southampton. He and I became quite good friends. When I first met Laurie, he was at Grimsby.
Right.
And then there was David Pleat.
Had you done the same with him there? Gone and met him before?
Yeah, and David Pleat at Luton, Graham Taylor at Watford. They were all coming through at that point, as I was. So, it was... These were the guys that I was kind of, getting close to and picking up points from, and I always had this thing about getting the team on a Friday if I could and if they trusted me, and that went through my career as well, still does actually. And it was a great experience.
That must have been incredible. I mean, do you have any, maybe more so along the lines with Sir Alex Ferguson? I mean,
I
was across great.
I had several ups and downs with Alex Ferguson. I mean, he got very cross one day when I asked him a question about Roy Keane's disciplinary record, and he stormed off shouting, and don't come here again, and was
this in the interview after?
It was after the game in the tunnel. But the one thing with Fergie was the next time you saw him, it was forgotten.
Right.
He had this ability to put you down and kind of go off in a rant, so to speak. But then when you met him the next time and he calmed down, it was slightly different.
Yeah. So would you be thinking, like, we've had a little row, I've asked him some testing questions, and he's told me to go on my way, whatever. The next time you see him, are you thinking, right?
Well, you are at first, but then gradually, I mean, it must happen all the time now. I mean, I've seen managers react to questions, especially after a big game when they're still wound up. And I'm sure afterwards some of them must look at it and think, well, perhaps I shouldn't have said that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but that's part of the fun.
That's part of it, I think that's what gets people hooked as well.
That's right. Absolutely, yeah.
So in that time, how would you sum it up? I mean, I know it's got quicker, etc., the influx of football changed, the atmosphere a lot different.
Well, I think from a commentator's perspective, the big change is everybody wore 1 to 11, and there was one sub. Now, when you start your preparation now for a game, you've got to think of 7 subs as well as the 11.
65.
Well, numbers like 60. And that has been quite a challenge, to be honest. And also, I think in those days, when I say 1 to 11, more or less the fullbacks played where they were in the midfield. But now, of course, the rotation during the game is phenomenal, and you don't know who might crop up on the left wing.
So, with that's you find that harder to commentate because the game's quicker and people are interchanging.
Yes, well, you've probably seen this more than me, probably, because you were involved. But yes, it always has got a lot quicker. I think that the rule changes. The back pass of the goalkeeper changed, didn't it?
I think that was great.
You know a lot about that.
That made me as a goalkeeper.
Well,
I was a frustrated forward.
Okay.
I was not quick enough to be a forward.
Right.
Probably a little bit small for a goalie. So when that rule came in, it helped me a treat.
Well, of course, and because I can remember days when if Liverpool were winning 1-0, Anderson would pass the ball back to Bombala and he'd wander around the penalty area,
bounce it again.
And all that changed, of course, with the goalkeeper kicking the ball out. You were back in play again.
Yeah, I think that rule was a massive point.
Oh, it was, and you had to keep your concentration because you didn't get that pause anymore.
Yeah, so you're constantly on. Yeah, definitely. And I think the playoffs as well was a massive one.
Yes, very big. Yes, of course. In those days, we used to get the sort of teams in the middle of the table. You'd say, "Oh, it's an end of season match." Nothing hinging on it. No. Whereas now, anybody down to sort of 8th or 9th is playing to get in the playoffs, and those at the bottom. So the whole league now tends to be more involved.
Yeah, there's not many games.
There's no meaningless games really, but there were then. But it kind of. The game became more kind of publicity conscious as well, but more sort of people talked about football a lot more in pubs as my career developed. That nowadays you can't walk into a pub. Well, you might walk into mine today because it's.
I look forward to it.
But I mean, without hearing a football conversation, even if you're not involved.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And the papers, of course, then didn't cover football like they do now with the big spreads of the lineups and massive interviews with people before a game, this type of thing. The newspapers didn't really get into that, I think Sky Television's brought with it a lot more coverage, a lot more demand, if you like, for interviews and stuff like that. You only got to turn on Sky Sports News and it's there 24/7. Well, there was nothing like that when I started.
I think most time was the CFAX where you had to wait for 1 to 80
to get the league table.
That one at 73 and you got off by the time 70
did it many times, Jimmy. Yeah, absolutely.
I used to my afternoon after training, the guys.
I know. I did it. I used to do that and check the league tables and all the rest of it. And no, it was a completely different game.
It's a different game. I suppose you take great things from back in the day.
Oh yeah, you can. Yeah. Oh yes, yeah.
Just on that, so with the technology, and obviously now from a commentator's point of view as well, VAR's come into play.
Mm-hmm.
How do you stand on that? Because I think it's got a place. I just don't like how they use it.
Well, I don't think it has got a place.
Do you not at all?
I'm dead against it.
So you just think the referee...
I think the goal line technology is great. Because the referee's got it on his watch instantly. He did the ball cross the line, which is a matter of fact.
Yeah.
But I think there are so many opinions now about every tackle. The question of, did he dive? Was that reckless? And I don't think... The great thing for football... about football for me has always been the flow of the game and the excitement level always being up there, and one move breaks down and another one starts. I think with the VAR they've misunderstood that football isn't like rugby or cricket. You don't get the natural pauses all the time, and I think the referees now running across the pitch with their finger in their ear and having to wait for someone else 100 miles away to make a judgment, I think it's spoiling it.
Yeah.
And I also think, I know this is tough for managers and players, but fans used to go home and really enjoy arguing about it. Was it a penalty? What did you think?
Yeah,
all this.
Absolutely. I think that makes a great argument. And it's a game of opinions.
Of course.
And I'm with you on that. And I understand the managers and coaches will go, it's my livelihood. If he gets that wrong,
I know.
Could be sacked.
I get that.
And I'm with you on it. I think for the factual, I think definitely crossed over the line. Yeah. Definitely, is it offside?
Yeah, I know. Well,
how can you say that? I don't know. I'm just using a name for example because he's probably the quickest one. Raheem Sterling.
Yeah.
Say he's running to the box.
Yeah.
He thinks he's going to get cleaned out. He tries to ride it. He goes over.
Yeah. Either he goes over avoiding contact, or there is contact, and it's so hard, especially for a commentator, because you've got to say whether you think it was or wasn't. It's such a shade. It's not black and white.
No, it's not black and white. Even when you sit and watch it for the next 2 minutes, they can't make you. It's impossible to make a decision on it. So I'm with you on that, and that could be. That's probably one that doesn't. Because, like you say, the flow of the game. It's such a.
I think once you disturb that, and and then if the referee plays on, and then he gets somebody in his ear saying, "Hold on a minute, that was wrong," the team could be on an attack at the other end, and the fans don't always know why the game's been stopped, because they're not showing all the incidents on the big screen.
It's not clear.
Not clear at all. And
does that make your job tough as well? Because you probably have to explain this to people watching.
Very much so, and I'm not suggesting for a moment that they should have the referee and the player should their conversation should. It's not like rugby, whether you can hear what the referee is saying to the players. I don't think football's even like that. I think you've got to just live with the way the game goes.
I think so.
And unless we're careful, I think we might spoil it.
Yeah, it is. It's such a unique game. You can't compare it to anything else like that. So, was there any players that you really enjoyed interviewing back in the day?
Well, I mean, Gaza was my favourite English player because he
is that just an interview?
Well, in more ways than one, because I think my career started while the likes of Bobby Moore and Bobby Cho, although I met them both and saw them play, they were on the way out when I really got into Match of the Day, and I had a new breed of players. Your Chris Waddles were coming through, and people like, I could name hundreds, but Gaza stood out because of his football ability and because of his personality.
Yeah, it was great.
Because you never knew what he was going to do next, either on or off the pitch.
No, absolutely.
And then, of course, the overseas players came in, and that, I thought, made a very big change. I thought people keep talking now about English players can't get through into the first team because there's too many continental players, but where would we be without our Delez and Villa and Thierry Henry and Cantona and Cristiano. I had the pleasure of watching all these. I mean, people should be very grateful that they had Cristiano Ronaldo playing in the Premier League for 6 years.
Absolutely.
It's unbelievable now, isn't it? Now he's scored 500 goals for Real Madrid.
Incredible.
But they brought a lot of colour to it, I thought.
Oh, I
really
agree.
did.
I agree.
And if you talk to the better Indian player, if you talk to people like Lampard and young players of that who were young at that time, they would study the overseas players, and people like Cantona came over and said to Ferguson when everyone else was going home, "Give me 2 young players and a ball, and I want to go out and practice." And they changed the game.
Absolutely, and that was never heard of, really.
And Bobby Robson did a lot there because everyone forgets this. They all go Ardiles and Villa, which I was definitely on top of, but at the same time, Bobby got Tyson and Mirren from Holland. And Ipswich he would have admitted that Ipswich were a long ball team to start with Mariner and Wymark up front. And then they got Arnold in. And Bobby Robson was a great coach, I was a huge admirer of Robson. He helped me a lot. And he just changed the way Ipswich played. And it brought what your sort of side of the game, the coaching side of the game, then began to get more progressive. And you've got your tacticians came in. I remember Malcolm Allison and coaches like this, Don Howe, and these guys not only just been on courses, but they developed a way of playing the game, changing tactics, and rotation came in, and the breakdown and when the ball's lost, and all this has come up. There's much more talked about this now than there was when I started.
Yeah. No, it isn't. Like you say, that helped it to evolve. It was brilliant. And they brought off the pitch was so different to the English players at the time.
Listen, when I started, there was no sponsorship. There were no commercial opportunities. There was no lounges where people had hospitality. That wasn't there then. No. It was much more primitive. And then, of course, they developed this commercial side of the game. I mean, Mike Rollo at Tottenham was the first one to develop a phone line that the fans could ring, and I helped him with that. And then, of course, the lounges started, and they sort of, people with so much money could go there, and then those who didn't have quite as much could go there. And now, of course, it's all graded, and there's executive boxes all around the ground. Well, there weren't any when I started.
No, not at all. And do you think, so as it evolved, the foreign players coming in, that's brought with it that sort of thing, because they brought a level of professionalism as well to the way they looked after their souls.
Yes, definitely.
The English players had to go with them.
And then Wenger came in and he started this nutrition thing, and if you talk to the Lee Dixons of this world, they'll tell you that the old 6 pints a night went out the window. What it should have done, I think. I've done all the arguments. But no, I mean, and the diet, and because I mean, I don't know what your pre-match meal was like when you started. But players used to have a steak, didn't they?
Yeah, there was steaks. It was anything really. There weren't even really a pre-match. No. There was no advice.
No, and yet now
at 2 o'clock.
Clubs have got full-time nutritionists and dietitians, and of course the physiotherapy side of the game moved on as well, didn't it? With the masseurs and the people who were there to assess injuries. Because when I started, it was the manager, the coach, and a physio.
Yeah, well, you look at a picture now.
12 or 14 people.
There's at least as many staff as there is players on the pitch.
Well, absolutely. I mean, Manchester City, when they go to a game now, the players are on one coach and the backup staff on another.
Did they really?
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, they travel as a separate team. We could go on for hours, Jimmy, about how different it is.
Yeah.
But I still think it's better, because I think the stadiums were the biggest change, because when the all-seaters came in, I think a lot of families went back to football.
Yeah.
Because we'd had that bad period in the 80s when there was the hooliganism and the tragedies of Hillsborough and Highsall. But then when Lord Justice Taylor's report insisted on the big games all-seater, then you've got people coming in groups and families coming, and far more women watch football after 92 than had before. And kids, of course, were more comfortable, and all that stuff. It all combined to make football the attraction that it is today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I could probably talk to John. Probably talk to you all day about this kind of stuff. I mean, like I said, I'm honoured to be in your house. I'm surrounded by so much memorabilia.
There's a lot of it, isn't there?
It's brilliant. I love looking around, and it's been great. I mean, the future for you is So your last game is...
I'm finishing with the BBC this year. It's a good moment to go, 50 years, and I've had some great times, and the BBC didn't throw me out, but they made it clear that at some point they had to bring through younger people and all the rest of it. But I've still got my voice, so I'm not saying I'm never going to broadcast again. I might do more corporate stuff.
Yeah,
and,
no,
you know, maybe speak at a few dinners and host a few functions and that type of thing. You know, which again, even that's grown in the last few years. You know, because nowadays everybody's having a dinner for something or an end of season party, and they want a host and they want a recognised voice. And I mean, this morning I did something for Watford Football Club, you know, because their community project is one of the best in the country, and it's been going 25 years, which is a heck of an achievement. And indeed, yesterday I think the EFL had a day where all the clubs kind of said, well, this is what we're doing in the community, and it explained how one club is concentrating on certain things, and people don't often know how much goes on off the pitch now.
Yeah. I think it's great. I mean, just with me on a smaller scale at Lincoln, like we've done in Nicky Callan. That's the main thing I've took from them as well. The way they've interacted with the community,
with the town,
and the town, it's just brought everyone together. And now I know it helps when you get results on a pitch. But just with getting everyone together.
Brian Taylor really started that at Watford, didn't he?
He's big at Lincoln as well.
He was at Lincoln, absolutely. Started at Lincoln. I remember going to interview him at Lincoln, and he had the players lined up to go to a sports quiz one night, and I thought, crikey, that's quite unusual.
Yeah.
And as you're quite right, that came at Watford. It became very big. And you know, linking the community with the players and sending them out to things and stuff like that. And I think there's even more scope for that now, because you know, the players have grown slightly away from the crowd in some ways because of all sorts of things that you and I both know about. But you know, fans can't kind of communicate on a one-to-one basis with the players at many clubs. I mean, Huddersfield came into the Premier League and their training ground is shared with, I think it's a golf club or something. Well, it isn't golf, but it's another sporting. So some of the fans go to the training and then they can sit down in the same room as where the players are having their lunch.
Really?
But not at many clubs.
Not many at all.
But Huddersfield have got that.
I quite like that open.
Well, I do, and I think it's a pity that we can't do more of that, really, because it's got to the stage where the fans only really see the players when they're on the pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I still remember getting a trophy from under 10 team back in the day, and someone had come and presented it.
That's right.
Keith Edwards at Sheffield United. I remember him coming to one. I was like, wow.
Yes.
So you remember these things, and it stays with you. I mean, that's a long time ago. So am I right in saying your last one for BBC will be the cup final?
Well, I won't be commentating on the cup final, but I will be making they're going to do something with me on the pitch.
Brilliant.
And so the FA actually.
Great.
So I don't know what that involves yet. But yeah, I mean, my last actual commentary will be probably at Crystal Palace on the last day of the Premier League season. That's how it's scheduled at the moment.
Have they got that day?
They've got West Brom, unfortunately, who may well be doomed.
I think they might be.
But Palace may still be fighting to stay. And Selhurst Park is quite a good ground to commentate from, you know, because there's a big atmosphere there in one corner, and you know, it's good, and it'll be a sad day. I mean, I'm ready.
Will you get emotional?
No. I've geared myself up to know. I know what I'm doing and when it's going to finish, and it may seem strange when next season starts and I'm not doing a game, but there'll be other ways I can use my voice.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose it's the same as when you come to the end as a player. You sort of gear
up
to it.
I'm sure you did. Yeah.
It's never quite the same, whatever else you do.
No, it won't be.
You wouldn't play it, obviously.
It won't be.
Commentating.
No, it can't be the same, obviously. But, you know, hopefully you've got another little chapter there somewhere to keep going, and that's what I'm intending to do.
No, well, good. And rightly so, you should be honoured by the FA and the FA Cup, because, like I said, it's a pleasure to be sat with you now. 50 years of... I'm not quite 50 years, because I'm 44. But all this time of watching the match of days and listening to your voices, it's been incredible. So you give me some great memories.
Well, I hope so, Jim. It's been a pleasure to see you.
No, it's been great. And thank you for inviting me to you.
No, listen, my actual family came from Lincolnshire. My mum and dad came from Boston.
Okay.
So I've always had a bit of an affinity with thinking about Lincoln City. Well, because of Graham being there, and now with the Cowleys, they're back on the map.
Yeah. Well, if you get a bit of time.
Yes, I would love to come to it.
Yeah. Hopefully, touch wood, if we don't get automatic promotion, we might sneak the playoffs.
You might go into the playoffs and play at Wembley. Yeah,
perfect.
That'd be good, wouldn't it?
We've got Wembley in 2 weeks as well, which is for the checker trade.
Yeah, I know you are.
Great. So to go there twice would be
that would be great.
Incredible. Because I was getting a bit bored this year after last season.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, it was such an event, wasn't it? The cup run. I mean, it was fantastic.
It was amazing. I think it captured everyone.
Well, and also Sutton at the same time.
Exactly.
2 non-league clubs.
It threatened to steal us thunder a little bit.
Well, a little
bit.
So
one extra.
But it gave the FA Cup a boost, you see, because one thing I would say before we finish is that the FA Cup was very, very important to me, because the breakthrough game for me was Hereford-Newcastle in '72, when non-league Hereford knocked out Newcastle United and Ronnie Bradford scored the goal. And Ricky George, who was a friend of mine from Barnet over many years, scored the winner. And I'm still part of the Hereford United reunion plan that they do every year.
Right, because that was your voice on it.
Ronnie and Ricky and I are still in touch all the time. Now, that FA Cup tie was the game that convinced the BBC that I joined as a low-key commentator doing just the last game, and I think that was when they were convinced that they could risk me, if that's the right word, on the top event.
It was a catalyst for you.
And the FA Cups all down the years, the finals I did and the other shop matches that I went to and the replays and all the rest of it, and the FA Cup actually died a bit, didn't it, at one point? It lost a little bit of its
luster. Lost a bit of its magic, didn't it?
Well, because the managers weren't fielding their strongest teams, and the Champions League had become so big. But I think the last 2 or 3 years, the FA, particularly now that the television is doing the live games in the first and the second rounds and things like that, everybody has their moments in the sun, Jimmy, now, don't they?
Absolutely. It's fantastic. I've always been a massive lover of the FA.
Yeah, I think it's very important we keep that tradition going, because it is unique to this country.
Yeah, I think so. Like you say,
some of the overseas players have said to me, well, we have a cup competition, but it's nothing like this.
It's nothing like it. I mean, what other level can you have a non-league side, 5 levels, 5 divisions below, beating and competing with Premiership top international?
It's terrific. I know it's
the magic. It's a magic.
As they said, the magic of the cup, and that I hope that will never die.
Me too. Well, on behalf of myself and everyone, Football DNA, just like to say it's been an absolute privilege to be in John's house, and whatever you do in the future, I wish you all the best.
I wish you all the best with your website. I know it's growing fast, and you're getting more and more people watching, and I know you do a lot of technical stuff on the coaching side as well, which clearly you've got an audience there. But if you can widen it and do things like, going and seeing people, and I think it's the future.
I like to think so. It's like with Football DNA, so it's everything to do with football.
I think it's a good title. That I was impressed when you said that, because that is what it's about, isn't it?
Yeah.
And Wally, good luck to you, mate.
John, you're a star. Thank you very much,
Jimmy.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate that.
Thanks.